Welcome to What If Nexus, where familiar heroes face unimaginable realities. What if Ash Ketchum was never chosen to be a trainer? What if the Pokémon League turned him into a Special-Ops Pokémon Ranger? Trained in secrecy, deployed in silence, erased from history. This isn't a story about badges. This is the Genesis Protocol. If you enjoy dark anime reimaginings and alternate timelines, hit like, subscribe to What If Nexus, and stay till the end. Because this saga will change everything. This is Chapter 1, the Genesis Protocol. This script is written in full English with a dark, tactical, and gritty military tone designed specifically for a USA-based audience. In this world, Pokémon are not friends, they are tactical bioweapons. Chapter 1, the Genesis Protocol. The world thinks it knows the story of Ash Ketchum. They see a boy with a dream, a yellow mouse on his shoulder, and a heart full of hope. But that story is a lie, a sanitized propaganda piece designed to hide the dark reality of the Kanto region. In this world, the Pokémon League isn't a sport, it's a military-industrial complex. And Ash Ketchum, he wasn't a trainer, he was a project. 10 years ago, under the command of General Samuel Oak, a classified initiative was launched, Project Genesis. The goal was simple: create a human Pokémon hybrid commander capable of absolute tactical dominance. Ash Ketchum was the chosen candidate, his DNA modified from birth to synchronize with the neural frequencies of pocket monsters. He didn't grow up playing in the streets of Pallet Town. He grew up in the Hive, a subterranean black site where he was trained in guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, and lethal combat. On his 10th birthday, there was no celebration. There was only a briefing. Acid Genesis 1, report to the armory, the voice of Professor Oak boomed over the intercom. Ash stood at attention. He wasn't wearing a vest and a cap. He was outfitted in a matte black tactical bodysuit, integrated with kinetic absorption plating and a neural link headset. He walked into the lab, his eyes cold and analytical. On the table sat a containment unit vibrating with raw, unfiltered electricity. "This is your primary asset," Oak said, gesturing to the unit. Codename, Thunderbolt. It's a Pikachu-class bioweapon, but its electrical output has been overclocked by 300%. Its nervous system is hardwired to your neural link. You move, it strikes. You think, it executes. The containment unit hissed open. The creature inside didn't look like a pet. Its fur was jagged, its eyes glowing with a predatory red hue. When it stepped out, the floor tiles scorched. Ash reached out his hand. There was no spark of friendship, only a digital synchronization. The Pikachu jumped onto his magnetic shoulder plate, its tail twitching like a live wire. "Your mission is the stabilization of the Viridian sector," Oak stated, pulling up a holographic map. "Rogue elements from the paramilitary group known as Team Rocket have seized the regional power grid. They are weaponizing wild assets to terrorize the populace. You are to infiltrate, neutralize the threat, and secure the intel. Lethal force is authorized." Ash didn't nod. He checked the seal on his catcher modules, specialized, high-impact spheres designed to force subjugate enemy Pokémon. "Understood. Initiating insertion." The deployment into Viridian Forest was a silent affair. Ash didn't walk the paths. He moved through the canopy, his thermal goggles highlighting the heat signatures of Team Rocket scouts. He didn't use moves. He used tactical strikes. "Thunderbolt, execute silent arc," Ash whispered into his comms. The Pikachu didn't shout its name. It emitted a high-frequency electrical pulse that traveled through the humidity of the forest, instantly frying the nervous systems of a nearby squad of Raticates used for patrolling. The scouts fell before they even knew they were being hunted. As Ash reached the Viridian outpost, he encountered his first major obstacle, a Team Rocket commander utilizing a combat-trained Raiden. In the old world, this would be a fair fight. In Ash's world, it was an engineering problem. Acid Raiden identified. Ground type, high physical resistance, low energy shielding, Ash's HUD analyzed. The Raiden charged, the ground shaking with every step. Ash didn't flinch. He triggered his gauntlet, firing a cryo dart that froze the ground beneath the beast, causing it to lose traction. As the Raiden struggled, Ash signaled the kill stroke. "Thunderbolt, railgun protocol, maximum output." Quote, Pikachu jumped into a specialized magnetic rail built into Ash's left arm. As Ash aimed, the Pikachu funneled its entire electrical reserve into a single, focused beam of blue plasma. The railgun strike didn't just hurt the Raiden, it punched a hole through its reinforced hide, neutralizing the beast instantly. The rocket commander trembled, reaching for his sidearm. Ash was on him in a blur. His tactical knife at the man's throat. Identify your superior. Where is the Giovanni level intel? You're a monster, the commander gasped. No, Ash replied, his voice a flat, terrifying monotone. I'm a solution. After securing the data and destroying the outpost, Ash stood in the middle of the burning forest. He didn't look for a Pokémon Center. He didn't look for friends. He looked at his HUD, watching the mission completion bar hit 100%. Objective secured, Command, Ash reported. The Viridian sector is under Leaf sovereignty again. Requesting coordinates for the next target. Roger that, Genesis 1, Oak's voice crackled back. Move to Sector 02, Pewter City. We have a problem with a rogue warlord named Brock. He's turned the local gym into a bunker. Take it down. Ash adjusted his goggles, the red glow reflecting in his eyes. The world thought he was a trainer. They were wrong. He was the end of the world they knew. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2. The Pewter Garrison. The mission to Viridian had been a clean sweep. The data retrieved from the rocket outpost confirmed the Iron Eagle's worst fears, the region. Gym leaders, were no longer just elite trainers, they had become autonomous warlords, carving out territories and fortifying them with heavy-duty Pokémon assets. The most formidable of these was the Pewter City Garrison, commanded by the man known as the Iron Wall, Brock. Genesis 1, update your tactical HUD. Professor Oak's voice cut through the static as Ash navigated the rocky outskirts of the Pewter perimeter. Satellite imagery shows that Brock has turned the Pewter Museum into a command center. The entire city is shielded by a network of Geodude-class proximity mines. If you step on the wrong stone, you're vaporized. Ash paused, his thermal goggles scanning the horizon. Understood. Initiating seismic dampening protocol. He didn't walk the main road. He utilized his magnetic grappling hooks to scale the jagged cliffs overlooking the city. Behind him, Pikachu, Acid Thunderbolt, moved in total silence, its paws wrapped in specialized rubberized stealth pads. Target spotted, Ash whispered. Through his long-range optics, he saw the Pewter Gym. It wasn't a building anymore, it was a reinforced bunker made of obsidian-infused concrete. Stationary onyx turrets guarded the entrance. Their massive stone bodies rigged with high-frequency motion sensors. Objective: infiltration and neutralize the warlord. Thunderbolt: prepare for ground circuit bypass. Ash dropped from the cliffs, a specialized static siphon device in his hand. He slammed it into the ground, creating a localized EMP that temporarily blinded the Geodude mines. In that 5-second window, he was at the bunker's airlock. He didn't use a key. He used a plasma cutter Charizard flame torch, slicing through the 6-inch steel door in seconds. Inside, the air was cold and smelled of wet stone and oil. Brock was waiting in the center of a massive combat arena, his arms crossed over a tactical flak jacket. He wasn't the kind mentor from the old stories, he was a mountain of a man with scars running down his face from the Kanto border wars. Genesis 1, Brock's voice boomed, echoing off the reinforced walls. Oak's Golden Project. You think your gadgets can break the iron wall? My Onyx hasn't just been trained. It's been armored with diamond dust coating. It's immune to your electricity. A massive, 60-foot Onyx rose from the shadows behind him. Its eyes glowed with a mechanical red light, a neural link interface. I don't need electricity to break a rock, Brock, Ash said, his voice a flat, terrifying monotone. I just need physics. Brock roared, Onyx, execute, tectonic slam. The massive beast slammed its tail into the ground, sending a shockwave that would have shattered a normal human's bones. But Ash engaged his kinetic absorption boots, leaping 40 feet into the air. Thunderbolt, execute, cryo burst. Ash threw a specialized canister. As it hit the Onyx's stone body, it exploded, coating the creature in liquid nitrogen. The temperature dropped to -320 degrees instantly. The stone groaned and cracked under the thermal shock. Now, Ash commanded. Pikachu didn't fire a lightning bolt. It utilized its iron tail, not as a physical strike, but as a high-frequency vibration tool. It slammed into the frozen Onyx. The combination of extreme cold and high-frequency vibration caused the iron wall to shatter like glass. The massive Pokémon collapsed into a heap of frozen rubble. Brock fell to his knees, his neural link feedback shocking his own brain. Impossible, that was an S-rank defense. Ash stood over him, the red light of his HUD reflecting in his cold eyes. He pulled out a subjugation disc, and slammed it onto the command console, seizing control of the city's defense network. The Pewter garrison is now under Leaf military control, Ash reported into his comms. Warlord Brock has been neutralized. Securing the Boulder Core power source now. Excellent work, Genesis 1, Oak replied. But don't get comfortable. The Cerulean Navy is mobilizing. They've seen what you did to the wall, and they're preparing a counterinsurgency. Move to Sector 03. It's time to go to sea. Ash didn't look back at the broken man or the shattered stone. He adjusted his tactical vest and walked out into the moonlight. The mission was everything. The world would be secured, one sector at a time. End of Chapter 2. Chapter 3. The Cerulean Navy. The fall of the Pewter garrison sent shockwaves through the Kanto underground. The Iron Wall had been cracked, and the military's elite Shadow Acid was moving fast. But while the mountains were Brock's domain, the vast, interconnected waterways of the Cerulean sector belonged to a different kind of monster. This was the domain of the Cerulean Naval Command, led by the tactical triplets, Misty, Daisy, and Violet. Genesis 1. Listen carefully, Professor Oak's voice was strained by tactical interference. Cerulean City isn't just a gym, it's a floating fortress. They've weaponized the Al Starmie population into a satellite array. They can track anything that moves on the surface within a 50-mile radius. If you approach by land, you'll be picked off by long-range hydro cannons before you see the city lights. Ash stood on the edge of the Route 4 cliffs, looking down at the shimmering blue lights of the naval base. Understood. Initiating. Deep dive, insertion. Switching to Acid. Squirtle, Shell Shock variant. Ash didn't use Pikachu for this engagement. He reached for a specialized heavy-duty catcher module. From the sphere emerged a Squirtle, but it wasn't the small turtle of legend. This Acid was encased in a titanium mesh exoskeleton, its shell fitted with high-speed turbine engines and a specialized, hydro-pulse, barrel mounted on its back. Neural link established, Ash whispered. He dived from the cliffside, hitting the water at a perfect angle. Squirtle caught him mid-descent, and the two propelled themselves into the dark depths of the Cerulean Sea. Underwear, the battle was different. The silence was deadly. Ash's HUD switched to sonar acoustics. He could hear the rhythmic thump-thump of the Cerulean Starmie patrols. These weren't just Pokémon, they were bioengineered mines. If their central core turned red, they would detonate with enough force to sink a destroyer. Target identified. The central cooling intake, Ash signaled. He moved rough the maze of underwater pipes with surgical precision. Using Squirtle's hydro cutter, he sliced through the high-tensile security grates. As he breached the inner sanctum of the Cerulean Gym, a massive, flooded arena, the lights flared to life. You're a long way from home, soldier boy, a voice echoed through the water-resistant speakers. Misty appeared on a command balcony above the water, wearing a sleek tactical wetsuit. Beside her, a Gyarados, Acid, Leviathan, roared, its body fitted with armor plates and laser-guided targeting systems. Misty of the Cerulean Command, Ash's voice was projected through his mask. You are in violation of the Naval Security Act. You have integrated rocket tech into your Gyarados' nervous system. By order of Project Genesis, you are to stand down. The Navy doesn't take orders from the Army's experiments, Misty snapped. Gyarados, execute, Hyper Beam, Focused Pulse. The Gyarados opened its maw, a glowing orb of destructive energy forming. But Ash didn't dodge. He signaled Squirtle to execute, Vortex Shield. Squirtle began to spin at incredible RPMs, creating a localized whirlpool that diverted the kinetic energy of the beam. Now, Thunderbolt, Ash commanded. Pikachu, who had been secured in a pressurized dry pod on Ash's back, was released. It didn't touch the water, that would be suicide. Instead, Ash fired a conductive wire harpoon into the Gyarados' armor. Pikachu, execute, Tesla Link. Pikachu grabbed the end of the wire and unleashed 200,000 volts. The current traveled down the wire, bypassing the Gyarados' external RMOR and hitting its internal nervous system directly. The massive beast let out a pained shriek as its mechanical augments short-circuited. Misty watched in horror as her primary acid was neutralized in seconds. No, my Leviathan, Ash surfaced, standing on the floating debris of the arena. He pointed his tactical gauntlet at the command balcony. The Cerulean Navy is decommissioned. Secure the Cascade Drive, and prepare for prisoner transport. As the military reinforcements swarmed the city, Ash stood in the rain, watching the glowing cores of the Starmie fade to black. He felt no victory, only the cold satisfaction of another sector cleared. Command, the naval threat is neutralized, Ash reported. But the data recovery is troubling. The rocket signals aren't coming from outside the region. They're coming from within the League. Requesting permission to investigate the Vermilion garrison. Gov. Lieutenant Governor. Surge has some explaining to do. Permission granted, Oak replied. But be careful, Ash. Surge is a war veteran. He knows the Iron Eagle's tactics better than anyone. He's been waiting for you. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4. The Vermilion Garrison. The Cerulean Navy had been dismantled. But the intelligence Ash recovered from Misty's servers pointed to a darker truth. The high-ranking officers of the Kanto region weren't just going rogue, they were being supplied with advanced weapon tech from a centralized source. The trail led directly to the most fortified military sector in the nation, the Vermilion garrison. Vermilion City was no longer a port of trade. It was a massive, walled fortress bristling with anti-aircraft batteries and electric grid defenses. It was commanded by Lieutenant Surge, a veteran of the global border wars and a man who believed that only the strongest should hold power. To Surge, Ash wasn't a hero, he was a lab-grown puppet that needed to be cut down. Genesis 1, you are entering a level 5 combat zone, Professor Oak warned, his voice crackling over the encrypted channel. Surge has turned the entire city into a giant Tesla coil. Every street is wired with 50,000 volts of deterrent energy. If you trip a sensor, the city itself will execute you. Ash stood on the outskirts, his silhouette framed by the lightning storms constantly swirling over the garrison. He wasn't deterred. He adjusted his insulated plating gear and checked the status of Asset Thunderbolt. Target identified. The Vermilion Power Core, Ash whispered. If we drop the core, the city's defenses collapse. Thunderbolt, prepare for voltage siphon mode. Ash didn't use the main gates. He utilized a subdermal burrowing unit, Asset Sandshrew, modified with diamond-tipped claws and a pressurized oxygen supply. Ash rode the unit underground, bypassing the surface-level electric grids. He breached the floor of the Vermilion Command Center, emerging in a shower of sparks and concrete. The room was filled with the hum of massive turbines. In the center stood Lieutenant Surge, a towering man in combat fatigues, his arms replaced by cybernetic enhancements that pulsed with yellow light. Beside him was a Raichu, but it was twice the size of a normal specimen. Its tail replaced by a serrated metallic whip. So, the little eagle finally crawled out of the dirt, Surge growled, his voice like grinding metal. I trained the men who designed your protocols, kid. I know every move you're going to make before you even think it. Then you know I'm not here to talk, Lieutenant, Ash replied, his hand hovering over his tactical belt. You've been funneling new DNA samples to Team Rocket. That's treason. Treason, it's evolution, Surge roared. Raichu, execute, Thunder Slam. The Raichu slammed its metallic tail into the ground. A wave of pure electrical energy surged through the floor. Ash didn't dodge, he hit a button on his gauntlet, activating the lightning rod protocol. Pikachu jumped in front of Ash, acting as a living ground. It absorbed the entire blast, its cheeks glowing white-hot as it channeled the energy into its own internal capacitors. Is that all? Ash asked, his eyes cold. Thunderbolt, return fire. Plasma bolt, piercing round. Pikachu fired a focused beam of electricity so dense it turned purple. Surge moved with surprising speed, his cybernetic arms generating a magnetic shield that deflected the bolt into a nearby turbine, causing it to explode. The room became a chaotic blur of fire and lightning. Surge engaged Ash in hand-to-hand combat, his mechanical strength overpowering Ash's exoskeleton. You're just a project, Ash. I'm a soldier, Surge shouted, throwing a punch that shattered Ash's tactical visor. Blood ran down Ash's face, but his expression didn't change. He had been trained to ignore pain. While Surge was distracted by the physical fight, Ash had been secretly deploying static web mines around the room. Now, Ash whispered, he triggered the mines. A web of high tensile, conductive wires snapped shut around Surge and his Raichu. Pikachu, execute, final discharge. Pikachu tapped into the garrison's own power core through the wires. It didn't just use its own power, it used the city's power. A massive surge of millions of volts traveled through the web. Surge's cybernetic limbs short-circuited, freezing him in place, while his Raichu was knocked unconscious by the sheer volume of energy. The lights of Vermilion City went out. The Tesla coil was dead. Ash stood over the paralyzed lieutenant, his breath heavy but controlled. He reached into Surge's tactical vest and pulled out an encrypted data pad. Mission accomplished. The traitor is neutralized. You don't know what's coming, Surge wheezed, his mechanical eyes flickering. It's not just a group. It's the blood in the veins of this region. Quote. Ash didn't answer. He signaled for extraction. As the military helicopters descended on the Dark City, Ash looked at the data pad. The next set of coordinates wasn't a city. It was a dark, isolated mountain range. Command, I have the location of the R headquarters, Ash reported. Moving to Sector 05, Lavender Tower. It's time to see the ghosts of this war. End of Chapter 4. Chapter 5. The Lavender Ghost Protocol. The data recovered from Lieutenant Surge's terminal was more than just a map, it was a horror story. The trail led to Lavender Town, a Sector O, officially listed as a civilian burial ground, but the satellite telemetry told a different story. The town was a massive, neural research hub, shrouded in a permanent fog of electromagnetic interference. For the first time, Ash's HUD was glitching, the sensors unable to penetrate the thick, violet haze that hung over the graveyard city. Genesis 1, proceed with extreme caution, Professor Oak's voice was distorted by static. Lavender Tower isn't a building, it's a massive antenna. Team Rocket is using it to broadcast a low-frequency psychosis wave. They aren't just controlling Pokémon anymore. They're trying to hack the human mind. If your neural link integrity drops below 40%, abort immediately. Ash stepped off the armored transport, his boots crunching on the ash-covered soil. He didn't use Pikachu for this insertion. The electrical signatures in the air were too volatile. Instead, he reached for a specialized containment crate. Asset. Haunter, Spectre variant, deploy. A shadowy, translucent form materialized beside Ash. This wasn't a wild ghost, it was a digital spectre, a haunter whose gaseous form had been infused with nanites capable of phasing Thrug. Solid matter and hacking encrypted servers. Neural link steady at 85%, Ash reported, his voice echoing in the hollow silence of the town. Initiating Ghost Protocol, infiltration. As they entered the Lavender Tower, the environment defied the laws of physics. The walls seemed to breathe, and the air was filled with the high-frequency screams of failed biological experiments. Ash saw them in the shadows, ghastly drones, Pokémon whose souls had been stripped away and replaced with AI targeting systems. Target identified. The central broadcast hub, Ash signaled. Suddenly, the temperature dropped to absolute zero. The floor beneath Ash turned to ice. From the ceiling descended a figure wearing a tattered, purple military cloak. It was Agatha, a former member of the elite council who had vanished years ago. Now, she was the guardian of the tower. Samuel Oak's little toy, Agatha cackled, her voice sounding like dry leaves. You come here with your steel and your wires. But you cannot kill what is already dead. The tower doesn't just see your body, Ash. It sees your sins. She signaled her primary asset, a Mega Gengar, its body bloated with stolen energy, its third eye glowing with a terrifying hypnosis beam. Genesis 1, her Gengar is using a synaptic blast. Oak shouted through the comms. It's bypassing your armor and hitting your brain directly. Ash felt the world tilt. Images of the hive, the brutal training, and the faces of those he had neutralized flashed before his eyes. His heart rate spiked. The neural link warning turned red, integrity at 45%. I don't have sins. Ash growled, clutching his head. I have missions. He forced himself to stand, his aura capacity flaring. He didn't fight with a move, he fought with a counter frequency. He tapped into his Haunter's nanites. Haunter, execute, Digital Eater, protocol. The Haunter surged forward, its gaseous hands turning into jagged code claws. It didn't strike the Gengar's body, it struck its neural source. The two ghosts collided in a storm of purple lightning and corrupted data. Agatha screamed as her link with the tower was forcibly severed by the virus Ash had unleashed. The broadcast hub exploded, the psychosis wave, shattering into silence. The violet fog outside began to dissipate. Ash walked over to the mainframe, his movement stiff but precise. He plugged in his data drive. Downloading Project R Alpha files. Securing the biological blueprints. Ash, wait, Oak's voice was hushed. The files, they aren't just about Team Rocket. They show a connection to the Kanto government. This goes all the way to the top. Ash looked at the screen. The blueprints showed a massive, underground facility beneath the Celadon City Megamall. It was a factory for a supreme bio-weapon. Codename Mewtwo. Mission parameters updated, Ash said, his steel blue eyes harder than ever. If the government is the enemy, then the government is the target. Movi. Ing to Sector 06, the Celadon Underground. Ash, you're talking about a coup d'etat. Oak shouted. I'm talking about security, Ash replied. He turned and walked into the darkness, his hunter flickering at his side. The Patriot was no longer just a soldier. He was becoming a judge. End of Chapter 5. Chapter 6. The Celadon Coup. The Lavender data stream was a death warrant. It revealed that the Kanto government wasn't just aware of Team Rocket, they were their primary shareholders. The Project Genesis that had created Ash was merely a prototype for the true objective, Project Mewtwo. Ash Ketchum, the Patriot of the Leaf's counterpart in this bio-war, had been played. He was never meant to be the savior, he was meant to be the field test for a superior replacement. Genesis 1, do you read me? Professor Oak's voice was frantic, broadcast on an unencrypted, emergency frequency. The Council has flagged you as a rogue asset. They've authorized executive termination. You need to go dark, Ash. Now. Negative. Command. Ash replied, his voice a cold, mechanical rasp. He stood atop a skyscraper in Celadon City, looking down at the massive, neon-drenched sprawl of the megamall. I was built for security. If the Council is the threat, the Council is the target. Initiating the Celadon coup. Ash didn't use stealth this time. He used shock and awe. He reached for a heavy-duty, gravity ball. Asset. Charizard, Scorched Earth variant, deploy. A massive Charizard materialized, its wingspan fitted with thermal-shielded jet boosters and its scales reinforced with carbon fiber plating. This wasn't a fire-breathing lizard, it was an aerial supremacy platform. Ash mounted the beast, and they dived. They didn't hit the mall, they hit the central security tower of the Celadon Gym. The building exploded in a plume of blue fire, the Charizard's magma cannon, vaporizing the anti-aircraft batteries in seconds. Inside the ruins of the Celadon Underground, Ash was met by the global sentinel of the city, Erica. But she wasn't a peaceful gardener. She was the head of biological warfare, surrounded by mutated Vileplume that emitted weaponized neurotoxins. You're a glitch in the system, Ash, Erica said. Her voice filtered through a gold-plated gas mask. We created you to follow orders. But Mewtwo will create orders. Evolution doesn't happen in a lab, Erica, Ash said, his HUD highlighting the ventilation shafts. It happens in the field. Ash signaled his Charizard to execute, flash over. The beast unleashed a 5,000-degree burst of heat, incinerating the neurotoxins before they could reach Ash's lungs. In the chaos of the thermal bloom, Ash moved. He didn't use a Pokémon, he used his CQC protocol. He engaged Erica's elite guards with lethal efficiency, using chakra-enhanced strikes to shatter their armor and neural dampeners to silence their Pokémon. He reached the core chamber, a massive, liquid-filled vat in the center of the underground complex. Inside, a creature sat suspended in violet fluid. It was humanoid, with a thick tail and eyes that leaked raw psychic energy. Mewtwo. Genesis 1, abort, Oak's voice screamed through the comms. The psychic feedback alone will fry your brain. It's already awake. The glass of the vat cracked. Not from physical force, but from a psychic pulse that sent Ash flying across the room. Ash's HUD shattered. His neural link screamed in agony, integrity at 15%. Mewtwo stepped out of the fluid, its voice echoing directly into Ash's mind. You are the failed mold. I am the final cast. How do you fight for a species that fears you? Ash struggled to his feet, blood dripping from his nose. He looked at his shaking hand, then at Pikachu, who was standing defiantly by his side, its fur standing on end. I don't fight. For them, Ash wheezed, his eyes glowing with a faint, blue aura, the Genesis link, hitting its limit. I fight for the mission. And the mission is your neutralization. Ash slammed a 0-point gravity well into the floor. The device created a localized black hole that began to pull the psychic energy into its core, temporarily grounding Mewtwo's power. Thunderbolt. Final protocol. Volt Tackle, God Slayer variant. Pikachu didn't just run, it became a streak of white-hot lightning. It hit Mewtwo with the force of a nuclear detonation. The psychic barrier shattered. The explosion leveled the underground facility, sending a shockwave that was felt across the entire Kanto region. When the smoke cleared, the facility was a crater. Mewtwo was gone, fled into the shadows of the Cerulean Cave to recover. Erica was in custody, and the Kanto Council was in a state of absolute panic. Ash stood in the middle of the wreckage, his tactical suit torn, his Charizard grounded. He looked at the sky as the sun began to rise. He was no longer a soldier of the government. He was a rogue commander. Command, Ash said, his voice cold and steady. This is Genesis 1. The coup was successful, but the target escaped. I am going off-grid. I'm going to hunt the god I just created. Ash, where are you going? Oak asked, his voice full of regret. To the only place left, Ash replied. The Indigo Plateau. It's time to end the league. End of Chapter 6. Chapter 7. The Indigo Armageddon. The Kanto government had fallen into chaos. The secret coup in Salado N had exposed the rot at the heart of the league. Now, there were no more shadows to hide in. Ash Ketchum was no longer a ghost, he was a storm. He stood at the foot of Victory Road, but it wasn't a path for trainers anymore. It was a kill zone. Genesis 1, Professor Oak's voice came through a private, encrypted satellite link. He sounded older, defeated. The Elite Four have been mobilized. They aren't going to test you, Ash. They've been ordered to sanitize the plateau. If you step onto that mountain, you are declaring war on the world's most powerful military assets. Ash adjusted his tactical gauntlet. His suit was scarred, and his HUD was a patchwork of red warning lights, but his resolve was absolute. The war started the day you created me, Sam. I'm just finishing it. Ash didn't use the main entrance. He utilized a halo jump from a hijacked transport, dropping through the clouds and into the heart of the Indigo Plateau. As he hit the ground, the first line of defense met him. Lorelei of the Frozen Front. She didn't use Lapras for surfing, she used them as biological artillery. But Ash had upgraded. He deployed Acid, Blastoise, Siege Tank variant. The two giants TRA, dead, Hydro Cannon, fire that shook the very foundations of the mountain. Ash didn't wait for a knockout. He used a Cryo Shatter grenade to stabilize Lorelei's position and moved past. He wasn't there for a trophy. He was there for the throne. He tore through the fighting dojo of Bruno with high-frequency blades and neutralized the bio-terror of Agatha's ghosts with a localized Sol Flare discharge. Finally, he reached the champion's chamber. Lance, the dragon commander. He stood in front of a squad of dragonites, their scales shimmering with kinetic shielding. You've destroyed everything we built, Ash, Lance said, drawing a ceremonial but functional military saber. In the name of the Global League, I will end this mutiny. You built a cage, Lance. I'm just breaking the bars, Ash replied. The battle was a cataclysm. Dragons clashed with technology. Pikachu, Acid Thunderbolt, engaged Lance's lead Dragonite in a high-speed aerial dogfight, moving so fast they created a series of sonic booms within the chamber. Ash and Lance engaged in a brutal CQC struggle, the Aura Link in Ash's blood pushing his body beyond human limits. With a final, synchronized, Thunder Slam, Ash neutralized Lance's command structure. The champion fell. The league was leaderless, but the true threat was waiting behind the throne. The wall of the chamber shattered as Mewtwo descended from the ceiling. It had evolved. It had integrated the stolen data from Celadon, its body now encased in a sleek, obsidian armor that channeled its psychic output into physical force. The humans are gone, Genesis 1. Mewtwo's voice vibrated in the air, cracking the floorboards. Now, only the weapons remain. Let us see who was the better investment. The final battle wasn't a Pokémon match, it was a struggle for the soul of the planet. Mewtwo unleashed. Psystrike. 0 point, a wave of gravity that crushed the oxygen out of the room. Ash countered by activating the Genesis Core, the experimental reactor embedded in his own tactical vest. Pikachu, one last time, Ash whispered. Ash and Pikachu synchronized their heartbeats. The aura and the electricity merged into a single, blinding white energy. They moved together, a blur of boy and beast. They bypassed Mewtwo's psychic shields by vibrating at the same frequency. Ash landed a punch powered by a kinetic core blast, while Pikachu unleashed. Ash the final judgment, a billion-volt discharge that lit up the entire Kanto sky. The explosion was seen as far as the Johto borders. When the smoke cleared, Mewtwo lay on the ground, its armor shattered, its psychic core exhausted. Ash stood over him, his tactical suit smoking, his mask gone. For the first time, he looked like a human, not a project. He didn't kill Mewtwo. He reached out his hand. The mission is over, Ash said, his voice finally showing a hint of emotion. No more masters. No more projects. We choose what we are. Mewtwo looked at the boy and, for the first time, sensed no malice. No orders, only a shared silence. The Indigo Plateau was quiet. The military era of the League had ended. Ash Ketchum walked out onto the balcony, looking out over a Kanto that was finally free from the Genesis shadow. He wasn't a champion. He wasn't a hero. He was the Sentinel. He looked at Pikachu, who sat on his shoulder, tired but free. New mission, buddy, Ash whispered. We protect the world from people like us. Ash disappeared into the mountains, leaving the Iron Eagle and Project Genesis behind. He became a legend, the rogue soldier who took down an empire to give the world back to the people. End of Chapter 7. You've just witnessed a reality only what if Nexus dares to explore. Ash completed the mission, but the mission didn't leave him. The League calls him a success. But history will never remember his name. Some protocols are classified forever. Subscribe to What If Nexus for Part 2 of the Genesis Protocol. Because the next operation breaks every rule.